All right, well, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Number one.
All right.
Figured that was coming, Brad. Thank you.
You're welcome. Somebody had to.
So I'll welcome everyone tonight. This is a meeting of the Three Falls Local Development Corporation and New York State Parks. I'm Royden Hart. I'm the mayor here in the village of Trumansburg, as well as the chair of the Three Falls Local Development Corporation. I'll let everyone introduce themselves. My hope is to go through some bullet points. We're not going to belabor this. We didn't prepare a PowerPoint, but to kind of go through the timeline of where we started and where we've ended up to this point, and what we're looking forward to over the next several years, frankly. And then most of the rest of the time, if not all of the rest of the time, will be open to question and answer session. Any questions or comments that anyone has, we'll be happy to field those and provide as much information as we possibly can, so Brad can take good notes.
Zoom my questions.
Oh, question, even better. I'll start down at my left end of the table.
Sure. Ben Carver, Deputy Mayor in the Village of Trumansburg and also the treasurer of this board.
Good evening, Fred Bond, Regional Director for the Finger Lake State Park System.
Hi, everyone. Caitlin Olson. I'm Ulysses Tax Supervisor and the Vice Chair of this.
Hi, I'm Deb Notke. I'm the Deputy Supervisor for the Town of Covert and also the Secretary.
There are two other LDC, as we refer to it, LDC board members who couldn't be here tonight. Rich Goldman from the town of Ulysses, and Catherine Sender representing the town of Covert. And I'll circle back to kind of the organizational structure of this organization in a minute. So some of you or many of you will recall that in the fall of 2021, seems like yesterday and not at the same time, the Baden-Powell Council made it known that they were considering selling the Camp Barton property. And they approached initially the town of Ulysses, the town of Covert, and the village of Trumansburg and asked if any of our municipalities might be interested in purchasing it. We don't have that kind of money laying around to purchase property. So initially we declined, but then through a couple of different conversations with a couple of different parties, it became clear that maybe something could be worked out if we could get New York State involved. I had a conversation in November of 2021 with Assemblymember Kellis, who many of you know is from Trumansburg, and she had just been involved in the purchase of the Bell Station property across the lake near the old Milliken Station. She had been involved in its purchase by New York State DEC, and she thought maybe something similar could be done. So by the spring of 2022, we had Fred and others from New York State Parks interested in the possibility of an acquisition. Parks's position, and I don't want to speak for Fred, but Parks's position was effectively that they actually had money for the purchase. And I don't think you said money was no object, but it was something like that. But they did not have money for staffing and operations. They were willing to own the property, but not manage it. So we had to come up with an idea, and the result of those conversations was the formation of the Three Falls Local Development Corporation. Now, what is a local development corporation? It's a carve out of New York State corporations law that allows municipalities to form a not-for-profit entity if there is some economic benefit to those municipalities or to the region. So because tourism is what it is in the Finger Lakes, it passed muster as far as the comptroller was concerned. And the towns of Ulysses and Covert and the village of Trumansburg formed this entity in the spring of 2023. During that whole time, Parks was in conversation with the Scouts as far as what the purchase price would be for the property and so on. And so between 2023 and 2024, we had kind of a dual track process where Parks was negotiating purchase of the property. The LDC was formed and negotiating with parks what this management agreement might look like if this entity, Three Falls LDC, is in fact going to manage a new New York State park. We came to an agreement. Much of it was based on other, I think there's 3 or 4 other state parks that are managed either by the township in which the park is located or by a third party. And so we had some precedent and some, I won't call it boilerplate, but we had a template that we could use for the management. Parks closed on the purchase of the property in the fall of 2024. And then we recently had the press release announcement of the execution of the contract with Three Falls LDC to manage the property as a New York State park. And so it's a monumental moment. It's a monumental instant that we now have a new New York State park on the shores of Cuba Lake, just about 100 years after New York State purchased what is now Taganic. And it's also a tremendous opportunity, I feel, for the 3 local municipalities to be able to participate in its management. With that comes the devil in the details part, which is kind of where we sit and where we are still in conversations with parks about how do we transition into a locally managed state park. The licensing agreement has been executed, so no one else can swoop in and say, well, we want to manage the park instead. But we have to work out timelines. We have to work out, right now, for instance, Parks is still doing some of the work on site. We're transitioning some of that over to the town of Ulysses, and the village of Trumansburg are collaborating on mowing the lawn, that kind of thing. Whether that continues in that form, or does the Three Falls LDC decide to contract out with a landscape maintenance company to do the lawn mowing, those are the things that we have to figure out more closely over the next couple of years. And important to that is the development of a master plan for the property. We know what Camp Barton was, but it is not Camp Barton anymore. And so we want to develop a master plan for what this particular state park will look like. It's not going to be a carbon copy by any means of Taganic. It's not probably going to look like any other state park in the region. But what exactly is it going to look like is what we have to determine. We applied for, and Ben Carver, and I think I saw Bill Shaw walking. Bill, I don't see Bill. Where's that? Hi, Bill. Bill Shaw, who was on our LDC board from its inception until a few months ago. Bill and Ben put together a grant application to Parks and Trails New York, which we were successful in receiving, for $100,000 to pay for this master plan that we want put together for the property. We solicited requests from engineering firms and planning firms over June, late May, early June timeframe. We have selected, although we're not going to formally announce it tonight because we don't have a contract signed, but we have selected the planning firm that we would like to work with, and they are going to take the next 6 to 9 months to develop the plan for the property for us. There are some things we know that need to be done. Infrastructure is essentially, I won't say non-usable, but close. I have 4 licensed water operators on my DPW because half of the village's water supply comes from a well down at Camp Barton. None of our water operators want to turn the water system back on because it's in such disrepair. So water infrastructure, as the village knows very well, is not cheap. So we know we're going to have to replace that. How are we going to pay for it, and over what time frame? That's part of the planning process that we're going to have done. Buildings. Which buildings are we going to keep? Which buildings are we going to renovate? Which buildings are we going to tear down is part of the planning process. All of that has to be approved by Parks because we don't own the buildings. We're simply the site manager. So you can imagine that it's going to be a multi-year process before we get to whatever the finished product ends up being. And I think I can speak for everyone on the LDC board that we're very excited about what this can look like. We're very excited about what that end product might be, although we don't exactly know what that end product is going to look like. In the meantime, as the press release mentioned, it is a state park and it is open. It's open for what's been described as passive use. So what is passive use? Passive use basically means you don't have access to water, you don't have access to bathrooms, but you're not trespassing when you're on property from dawn to dusk. So think of it as I described in an interview, think of it as an off-season New York State Park, where you are not trespassing when you go to North Point to watch the sunrise in December, but you're not going to get into a bathroom and you don't have access to water or concessions. That's kind of the feel of Camp Barton at the moment. Some of the trails are closed, access to the falls at the moment, the 3 falls after which our organization is named. The access to the falls is not available. Some of the trails need to be repaired. The walking bridge was removed for those familiar with the property. So again, it's a multi-year lift that we're looking at to get the park to where we want it to be. But it is the first major hurdle, which is New York State ownership, local management, contract execution, that has been completed. And we're excited about that and excited to move forward on that piece. Fred, was there anything you wanted to?
Yeah, so as this is the property of the people of New York State now. Okay, and as we continue to advance that, I believe there will be in our foreseeable future opportunities for the public to engage and use that space for gatherings. But right now, as Warden pointed out, the systems just can't support that activity right now. Nothing against Boy Scouts, but the standards for state parks are slightly different than the standards for Boy Scouts. I think we can all, understand and appreciate that. So Warden pointed out that the South Rim Trail has been closed. It's not the standard. Access to the waterfall, it's something that we want to work on early on and get that access in there. But right now, it's just not safe to walk up to that waterfall. We haven't performed any routine scaling operations like you would see in other state parks. If we're going to be bringing the public in there in the volume, state parks has the obligation to make sure that it's a safe and accessible site. I do want to, thank Deb, Town of Covert, for their new bridge. If you haven't been down to the park, it is a really nice ad, and it's going to be the connection between 2 sides of the park. Enough room for vehicles, enough room for pedestrians. Really well designed and a great add to that property. But this is a 93-acre parcel. In some ways, it's a blank slate, and it's a slate with a lot of history. And I am really excited that this planning process is happening when it is. The timing of this worked out really, really well, and we can begin to engage in that process. And then from that plan will enable the LDC to apply for many more grants and support from New York State, Empire State Development, foundation support. By having that document in place and saying, this is where we are, this is what we're reaching for, I'm very confident that we're going to see a strong support for standing this up. The other thing to recognize is that in the future, any revenue that gets generated from that in the future, if there is the opening of the dining hall or a wedding that's taking place or the collection of vehicle usage fee, the entrance fee, or rentals of any of the cabin sites, that revenue will remain with the LDC. Okay, so the economic model is that the LDC can go through sort of the business plan to figure out how can they program and how can they, it's a strong word, don't take it the wrong, monetize the property. But that's one of the calculations that you've got to go through with a park, is to figure out what can you generate for revenue to take on and run those operational costs. What's that balance point? And I'll just go back, Rawdon gave the timeline. This has been one of the best pieces of work that I've been able to take on in my tenure as a regional director. I've been here for 13 years come July, and this process with the 3 local governments, with the formation of the LDC, it was an awful lot of work on the part of each of these municipalities, and they pushed themselves. They pushed us as parks, and it was just a really, really good, honest process that we all engaged in. So very, very proud of that work. This is not uncommon. This structure is not uncommon to state parks. Here in the Finger Lakes area, up in the town of Sodus, we have a municipality that operates a state park. We have friends groups that will operate historic sites, like up in Canandaigua. So these partnerships are something that really helps state park grow and begin to develop stronger programming for getting people out into these public spaces. The last thing I'll share with you is that this interest in the outdoors is just increasing. I ran some reports, and in the last 10 years, attendance at New York State parks in the Finger Lakes region has gone up by 60%. Okay, so there is an awful lot of interest. Parks are giving an incredible amount of value to the folks of people in New York State. They are economic engines for their local communities, and this is going to be a really, really fine facility. It's going to take some time, a number of years, but you know, we will get there. Yep.
Thanks, Fred. Yeah, three things I forgot to touch on that I'll mention briefly, and then see if any other LDC board members have anything to mention. As part of the agreement for the sale of the property, we did enter into an agreement with the Baden-Powell Council, the scouts that owned the property, to allow them continued scheduled usage of the property. So if you happen to be there and you happen to see people camping or using the property, it's specifically that group. It's not available for anyone else. Parks had to agree to the agreement. So when the press release stated that it's for passive use and all of these other activities won't be allowed, that is the Baden-Powell Council specifically, that scout group is exempted from those restrictions. So they will be on site, I think 4 or 5 more weekends this summer to continue their tradition of usage of the property in its limited condition. They don't have access to the bathrooms, they don't have access to water and so on, but scouts it's good for the kids to do it the old fashioned way. Yeah, we're providing porta potties, of course, there. As far as future use of the property and what that's going to look like, part of the reason why we chose the planning firm that we did is that they included in their proposal a lot of community engagement. Not exactly sure what that's going to look like, but they did want to seek out community input on desires for use of the property. Is swimming desired? We've had a lot of conversations about not wanting to staff lifeguards, but I use that as an example of, you know, what does the community really want to see come out of the local management of a new state park? So that will be forthcoming. And then the last thing I did mention, and I don't know how much interest there is in this or not, except from the taxpayer perspective, the structure of the Three Falls LDC as it was put together involves membership of the 3 municipalities that we mentioned, Town of Ulysses, Town of Covert, Village of Trumansburg. Each of those members gets to appoint 2 people to represent them on this not-for-profit board. That not-for-profit board then makes all of the decisions with respect to the management of the property that the LDC is entitled to do. Those decisions don't then come back to the municipal board. So if Three Falls and Parks agrees that we're going to, you know, construct something, that then doesn't come back to the village or the 2 towns to ratify. The LDC board is autonomous in that respect. However, the 3 municipalities are contributing, although we haven't really spent any money. We're contributing financial resources to the LDC during this startup phase. So Fred's point was important. The LDC gets to keep the revenue whenever that's generated and however much it's generated, up until the point that the municipalities are able to recoup all of their costs. I can't tell you if that's going to be 3 years or 13 years, but at some point, Fred could share whether how well Taganic does in the summer. At some point, there's going to be enough revenue coming back through this property for the municipalities to recoup its initial investment. As I say, so far, we really haven't spent much. Fortunately, we got the grant for $100,000 planner. We wouldn't have enjoyed writing that check ourselves, although it's necessary, but the grant takes care of that. So that's a couple of things I wanted to touch on, and then see if anyone else on this board has anything they want to say before we open it up to questions.
I don't have anything particularly unique to add, but just to emphasize two things that Roden mentioned. So one, your tax dollars, whether you live in Covert, Ulysses, or the Village, have for the last 2 years gone to support and underwrite the LDC's activities, which up until this point, primarily attorney's fees. But as we get more and more into operations, that number will increase. So as citizens of those municipalities, I would just encourage everyone to reach out to your elected officials. And if you're in favor of that support and you want this project to continue, just give voice to that support as much as you can. I think we are an independent board, so it's useful for us to hear that feedback. But if you can share that with your boards based on whatever municipality you live in, I think that's helpful in a general sense. The other thing, and Roden did touch on this, but I want to just put sort of a finer point on it. There will be surveys coming out about how you envision this property looking in 5 to 10 years. There will be community engagement. There will be multiple meetings, not terribly unlike this one, that will be rolling out in the next few months. So please keep your eye on the various newsletters from either the village or the town. Keep your eye on Facebook or however you find your news, however you found out about this meeting. But if you've ever participated in a planning process before, the more engagement we have, the more thorough that document can be, the more it can reflect the community sentiment. So please, please, please keep your eyes open for that and participate as much as you can. We have certainly ideas of our own, but I think we would all greatly prefer that this becomes more of a community collective vision. But that's it.
I just wanted to thank everybody for coming, and I see some of my neighbors and friends here, which I'm glad to see. And I wanted to update you. I know that I had sent around a petition to lower the speed limit on North and South Frontenac. And we were waiting for the DOT to give us permission to put the signs up, and I just received that permission. The signs have been ordered, and we're just waiting to hear back from, Dig Safely, New York. Make sure that we're not gonna be digging up somebody's electric or gas. So we are waiting for that. As soon as that's in place, Jeff McShane, supervisor of the highway, will put those signs up. We've also talked about putting a stop sign down at the end of South Frontenac, where the just before the road goes down, where a lot of residential homes are. So we've already decided probably go ahead and do that. So I just wanted to give you a heads up that we finally got to go ahead on that.
What's the speed limit going to be?
25 miles an hour.
It's 15 miles an hour more than it used to be.
I'm sorry, Dolores.
It is.
My Deb Nottke. Nottke. Nottke.
Stop sign would go where? Which direction?
Down at the end, just before you.
No, I understand, but it's not coming out of the park or going into the park.
Well, that's still yet. to be
That'll be a
decided.
DOT decision.
It's coming down the hill, on South Front. You're gonna stop.
Facing
before you-
McGuire's house.
Yes,
Terry's front line.
no, I'm gonna be in anybody's.
We're gonna be on the side one.
Pardon?
Hang on, Brad, please. Anything else, Deb?
No.
Sorry.
I just wanted to say thank you to the many, many people who signed petitions, who wrote letters to the editor, who showed up at public meetings. I know in all 2 municipalities to support this process. I can guarantee you state officials would not have taken notice if the people of our communities hadn't demonstrated over and over again a desire for this not to become a commercial site, because that's what happens, right? That was the most likely outcome. And if State Park has been willing to support it. And while I know, Fred, that there are other models, I can, at least your attorney tells me we are the first 3 municipalities crossing
True.
political lines, crossing county lines, crossing municipal lines to come together to work cooperatively. And I think it's a really, really good example of what functional cooperative engagement and leadership and community engagement underpinning all of that, right? In our very, very fractured time in our nation. So it's really just been a pleasure to work with the community. Please, I can't emphasize enough, please continue, if you care about it, to let us know as elected officials, boards know that this is the property that matters to you. And, you know, we have a lot of details to work out. It's not a finished product. It's gonna take years, but that the community engagement piece has just been really, really heartening. And it's wonderful to see what you can accomplish when you find ways to work together.
Before we open it up to questions, I would be remiss if I didn't note that the reason the village of Trumansburg got involved in the first place, well, there were a lot of reasons, but a primary practical reason is that our primary water source since 1968 has been from a natural gravel aquifer located at the old Camp Barton, which has never been duplicated. And we tried. We spent 6 or 7 years trying to drill similar type wells in a location with no success. And that well was still owned by the Scouts. Contrary to what some had believed, the easement that was granted to the village in 1968 did not transfer ownership. So my primary, again, other reasons included, but one of my primary motivations for getting the village involved in this project was to secure that source. It still represents 50% of our water supply. The other half, ironically or not ironically, is also located at a state park. So that's nice. But as a result of the property exchange and the negotiations that were included, the parcel on which the well sits was transferred to the village of Trumansburg's ownership for no cost. And so that was a historic loop that was closed, and I'm very, very pleased from an infrastructure protection standpoint and from a planning standpoint that the village now owns all of its water sourcing where it did not before. And to echo what both Caitlin and Fred said, I parallel Fred a little bit. I came on the village board right around the time that Fred became regional park director. Seems like really, really long time ago. And I've been mayor, of course, for the last 7 years. And I'm not sure that I've seen any project with as a high quality, a level of collaboration between multiple entities. I mean, you're talking about LDC and parks, but we have 3 municipalities, which means 15 elected officials between the 3 boards. New York State Parks, the governor's office was involved, Assemblymember Kellis, Senator Webb. There were just a lot of people involved. And of course, with all of those agencies comes teams of attorneys. And so the fact that we were able to pull this off at all is, those of you who know me know that I can be fairly critical and cynical when it comes to all things Albany. But this was an example of government at multiple levels working well together for a good end purpose that I don't think I've ever seen before. So that's something that we're very pleased to be a part of and pleased to celebrate.
I think that also follows, and it deserves recognition, the Boy Scouts and their patience. Okay. They waited over 3 years from first contact to us going through the appraisal process to being able to get to the closing table. And their commitment to maintaining the property during that period, their commitment to making sure that it got the best public use possible, they really, really stood strong and were incredibly patient. understandably frustrated at times with the bureaucracy and how slow things were moving. But they really deserve to be recognized for their patience and willingness to make sure that this ended up in the hands of the people of New York State.
And with that, I would open it up to questions and comments from anyone who might have any. Yes, sir.
Oh, hats off for the bridge, you. Also noticed that it looks like a fire hydrant in that area, which sounds really good. It looks like some trees been cut down recently. So that suggests to me that there is a incipient vision of what needs to happen with that property. So I understand you have the planning grant and the process to begin that planning, but there's some basic things you can take care of. You want to elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, so when it became Parks property, and I'll let Fred speak to the specifics, but Parks has protocols for things such as, which I didn't know, it was interesting to learn. I don't know if they GIS map every tree on the property, but Parks does do GIS mapping of their trees, which means that you can't cut down a tree without approval, those kinds of things. So there was specific work done to remove trees that were considered initially hazardous or potentially dangerous. I didn't mention earlier, but I meant to, all of the buildings are locked. They're padlocked and not accessible. There has to be further inventory done on the condition of those buildings. The planning process is really more about what is really the vision for this property as a park. So what's happened up until now is more, analogies get weak very quickly, but it's like buying a house and moving in and starting to remove the things that you know aren't going to stay. What the house is going to look like in terms of design comes after the architect takes a look. That's kind of the best analogy I can come up with on the spot for where the planning firm fits in.
But you raise a good point. So when we acquired the property, our staff, mostly based out of Taganic, Bill Hughes and Kevin Rapplier, our manager and assistant manager, the team at Taganic, we went through and did a hazardous tree assessment. Right, we know the public is going to be there. We have an obligation, and so there were a number of trees that were removed, mostly ash. You know, it's sad. The ash situation. We also know that the lakefront is going to be incredibly popular. So they wanted to open that up, make that access a little bit safer. It's not a swimming beach, but it is far safer than what it was. And so they wanted to open up the view a little bit and remove the hazards there. And our staff is actively engaged. It's kind of fun to see our staff engage with the public works staff of the village and the two townships, because everybody's kind of throwing in a little bit of effort here and everybody's got a little bit of different set of expertise, and they're all coming together around the property. So they're down there regularly. The village is down there on a daily basis, checking out the well. Bill's there checking on some buildings. We've actually got some of our equipment stored in the old boat barn, because we were at capacity. So, you know, you're hearing from your elected officials, myself, but this is something that collaboration has really been good to see, kind of filtering down from our desk down to the folks on the ground.
I would add to that the Community Science Institute, CSI, many of you are familiar with. They've agreed to do HAB monitoring for us at the lake. So they will notify us, and then signs, well, they'll notify Bill at Bill Hughes at State Parks, and he'll post signs if necessary this summer. So it has been, it's the early stages of initial cleanup of the property is what you saw. There's much more to come, and you've got a lot of participants in that. Yeah.
Just to circle back to what I think you were talking about, the speed limits. And the signs, it sounds like they've been ordered.
I understand from Jeff McShane that they have been ordered.
Well, I mean, things can always change in the future, right? I'd just like to comment that I think 25 is gonna be fast. When you have a field on the water side and a field on the inland side, and people running back, especially kids running back and forth, 25 is gonna feel like a
Oh, you
highway.
mean through the park itself?
Yeah.
I guess we'll have to discuss.
So southbound Frontenac Road is in such bad shape that nobody would ever want to drive at 25. Telling somebody that they could is inviting danger, I think.
South Frontenac has been paved.
Pass on that road now.
So unfortunately, unfortunately, our village board knows a lot about speed limits. Because we've spent the last 20 years arguing with DOT. New York State does not allow what they call an area speed limit, does not allow an area speed limit to be lowered below 25 except in the school zone. So the fact that they're willing to lower it to 25 is a miracle because they won't let us lower it to 25 in front of Gimme Coffee in that curve because there haven't been enough fatalities there. That's in their letter. They said fatality statistics do not support lowering the speed limit here. So 25 is fantastic. It will seem fast, but there's no option to lower it further.
But once you're in the park, you can regulate the speed. too.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct. Once you're in private property, but Frontenac Road that runs through the park is like 89 running through both sides of Saganic. The road itself is a municipal road and we won't be able to lower that if, I don't know that there's any, I mean, there's the driveway. If there was a road that went up, say, past the dining hall, we could do whatever we want in terms of speed there, but
Speed bumps in.
So that's what I
that we could consider.
So, well, I know it's gonna be the town of Coburg who does, so, what the village is allowed to do in terms of road management and what towns are allowed to do is different, ironically. And so in different correlation to state parks in Ulysses, right, the Black Diamond Trail runs through a significant portion, and we've had residents, with concerns about, different intersections there. It's really hard to get state DOT to lower rates. I live on Falls Road. They were generous to lower it to 50 from 55. I mean, if there's any functional value in that, I'm hard pressed to believe it. But what we did find, and what we're exploring independently as a town in around the Black Diamond area is, there are opportunities for municipalities or townships to actually put in traffic calming. So even though you can't control this posted speed limit, there are certainly many ways that Coburg, I think, might be able to creatively look at how to lower those speeds, whether it is a speed bump, whether it is some other kind of signage, things like that. There is a little bit, I would say, of flexibility in state law that does allow for that. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's a done deal, but definitely pressure that board about it because they're the ones who will ultimately probably have the ability to control them.
Yeah, Brett.
A little deeper dive on the roads and the stop signs a little bit. So coming down South Frontenac, there was always a dirt road. Our property line actually went right down the middle of the road and then the scouts owned the other half. And your
So does
family-
ours
and your
as
family
well.
owned
We're
the top half.
half owners of
Right.
that road.
Yeah.
In our team.
And now it's a one lane speedway. With with posts. That mark where you can fall off. Two cars, one car coming up and one car going down, cannot pass each other on that road.
someone has.
Is that going to be addressed at all? And also, if it's 25 mph coming down South Frontenac, I can almost guarantee Terry Justice's trailer is gonna get hit. By somebody missing that stop sign or missing the curve or so on and so forth. I'm a little kind of concerned about that.
They're gonna lose their brakes. It's
Right.
happened several
Right,
times.
there have been trucks that have done that before.
Yeah, they cut off their brakes. I go down in third gear every single time. So I. It's-
I would
it's-
invite you to come to one of our board meetings and go for.
Sure. Yeah, I always.
I mean, this is
Jeff about
really
that.
the first time, that I've heard that concern.
There
I
is-
mean, I've never seen any speed limit signs on.
The scout camp always had a 10 mph speed limit on it. They put up their own signs,
Yeah.
caution scouts on the road, so on and so forth, on private property.
But I'm just saying, if you come to our board meeting,
Absolutely,
voice your
sure,
concern.
sure.
of course, we'll hopefully,
Which is gonna be the main entrance for the state park?
well,
Are
we
both
don't
roads
really
going to
have
be
that.
entrances or exits, if you will?
I believe the main entrance, Fred, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the main entrance is gonna be off of, is gonna be North Front. It's
Okay.
gonna be the.
It's the standard Boy
I
Scout.
don't know why it
roads.
wouldn't be.
The
just
the
because-
original paved road.
The paving of South Frontenac was in large part due to the replacement of the bridge.
Yeah,
Needing
for sure.
access to the property.
Well, back in the day, you could get two cars going past each other on the dirt road. You can't. You're lucky if you get a decent sized trailer up and down that on a boat. Because it's one narrow lane of asphalt with marker stakes, which is fine. It's better than falling off the ditch, like I said, but it's be great if they had some passing spots.
And I'm not sure this relates to the road. The road bed, the 29 and change, linear width of the one that goes through the new state park. I assume you can unequivocally say that that will remain under the town of Covert public property. The reason I ask that is our family has been traversing that with vehicles and pedestrians for over 60 years. I think Brad's family is even longer than that. And so I guess one of the reasons I came tonight is just to make sure, you know, Marianne and I, we walk there 2 or 3 times, you know, a day, back and forth to what's now the new bridge. And we want to be assured, if you can assure us that that will remain the public road of Covert. Is that correct?
The roads do belong to the town of Covert. That's correct.
So maybe it's a research item and just see who owns South Frontenac, because I think Brad's family has a deed he described. I think ours does too. So I don't know if Covert actually owns South
It
Frontenac.
may not, but like I said.
They might have a easement of that description. And so does everyone else, which is fine. I mean, Brad's family wants people to use it. We want people to use it. We want the park to be successful. We're super excited while you're saying that. Thank you for everybody here. Your entity, it's easy to sit back at our houses and sort of be armchair quarterbacks, but you guys are actually in the thick of it and actually doing the real hard work. So thank you to everyone. And what I'm hoping is all your efforts, 20, 30, 50 years from now, these guys here and your colleagues and your town boards, boy, they were geniuses. And boy, I'm serious. We're gonna be all dead, but it really should be that they had the foresight, because that property was many things. It was an industrial site. It was a hotel site.
You know,
It was a ferry site.
very site.
It was a scout site, and now it's a new thing. So we're, just like we were excited for scouts doing something positive for the scouts. As you know, doing something positive for young people. I think this is really positive. I just with your hard work, because it's easy for us to let you do all the hard work. It's gonna be fantastic somehow. You can affect thousands of people's lives every year. So thank you for all of that. I mean,
Thank you.
But we also have to keep reminding you to come to the meeting, whether it's at your town or village, to keep us abreast of what's going on, you know, in your lives. You know, that may affect our decisions. We need to know that information. If we don't have it, we can't act on it.
I went with Jeff, road department, in minute detail, everything, because I've done thousands of projects in history. I'm retired now, so I don't do that anymore. Exactly, and he concurred. Whether he is allowed to by state DOT, that's a different issue. But I mean, I gave him my input on every aspect of road management, particularly of South Park, but of the whole thing, so.
Had a hand up in the back, yeah.
A couple years ago, with some signs, the property along Route 89. And that property ever sold and in private hands, or is it gonna be part of this?
So there's 40 acres at the top, what we would consider the top of the old camp along Route 89 that was sold and is privately owned.
That is in an easement that can't be broken. that property along 89.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think everybody probably knows Tim McGuire purchased that property and put a perpetual easement on that property. So nobody can ever build anything on that strip along 89.
Okay.
Which is I live on the corner of View Road and 89. And the fact that that property was purchased by Tim McGuire has saved the value of my real estate tremendously. Otherwise, there would have been a mountain of apartments there, people could overlook the lake. And in that event, our real estate value would have taken a nosedive.
That's good.
My name's Kirsten, I'm a resident of the town of Culver, just over Trumansburg line. And I was wondering if there would be opportunities for folks to volunteer and help out in there, so in particular trails. And alongside of that, I found out about tonight's meetings, I asked Bill, State Park, how we might help with trails, and he said, so what's the best way to make sure we can engage the process? So you all, the development corporation, how like that?
It's a great question. I mean, providing us directly your contact information, we can make an effort to keep you apprised of developments. As far as parks accepting volunteer help, I'm gonna sidestep that.
Sure.
question.
So I mean, we have some traditional weekends like I Love My Park Day where we welcome volunteers to come into the facility. Right now, specific to this property, I really think we need to get through the planning process and begin to develop that roadmap. It's very likely that one of the things that will result from that plan is the recommendation that a friends group gets formed. Okay, so yet another, I know there's a lot of non-for-profits out there, but this would be yet another arm that could assist and assist with programming and maintenance of the facility proper. Yeah,
That still the end of the parks now, though.
yet to be determined. To be determined
So
how that would fall.
So one thing that you can do just to make sure you're getting notices, if you sign up for either the town or village newsletters, if you're in Covert, you may not see them, but if you go to either of our websites, it's fairly easy to sign up. We post things like this meeting, and so as far as the planning, all of that stuff, that will all go through those listservs. So that would be a good way to stay in touch. It is a good thought, though. We'll consider the idea of putting together our own listserv, although at a certain point you're all just duplicating work. So I don't know, we'll have to talk that over. But if you sign up for either the village or town, you'll definitely get the notice for any future meetings.
Yes, sir.
Don't like, I was just wondering if there was, I'm very grateful to hear that scouting being allowed to use the property. We've heard so many things back and forth on that. The other thing with that, is there any plans for or objections to some kind of a permanent monument or plaque or something along that line celebrating 100 years of Camp Barton being on that property? Or something with pictures or a short history of the use of the property, and because that's a great part of our scouting tradition.
Yeah, so I think there's as was touched on, it was a hotel, it was the ferry site, it's the Boy Scout. So we have really multiple storylines, and we do need to interpret that. Absolutely, there's history with the Cayuga Nation. There is natural history. We have peregrine falcons in that gorge. Okay, they nested. They were the only successful pair to fledge this spring. Our other pairs did not have success with their nests this spring. So there is a lot of interpretation that we need to engage with. Our staff, our environmental educators, and our stewardship staff have been on to the site of the property, and we will be developing that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
It's beautiful what's up at Buchanan here.
Yeah.
Oversight and everything. It would be a shame to let that history of the property, like I said,
Yeah.
the hotel, the ferry, the whole 9 yards to go slip into.
No, but we will, that will be, it'll likely be the same sort of a program with signage, static signage. But, yeah, that's definitely part of the plan.
Like a follow-up financial question, I mean, once the town's reimbursed from the revenue stream, what happens after that reimbursement?
So down the road, there's a couple of different options. Option one, which fortunately, and again, I don't want to overstate the collaborative nature of this, but I was pleasantly surprised to learn. Well, option one would be anything over and above what the municipalities recoup would be remitted to New York State. Option two, which actually is the option that was offered, would be for revenues over and above what the municipalities recoup to be reserved for property maintenance and programming. So we wouldn't be able to flow back through to the municipalities as quote unquote profit, but it also wouldn't disappear into the
General fund.
I was gonna say black hole, but general fund. General fund in Albany. So that's the long-term plan, is that, again, revenues over and above expenses would be reserved and held locally, if we want to call it that, for the property.
Another financial question. Are there insurance concerns or costs, and if there's those?
So we do carry, the Three Falls LDC has insurance. That was part of the agreement or requirement for the licensing agreement to be executed. We have insurance, kind of general umbrella liability for a park property. Remains to be seen whether that changes at all once we get into specific programming. Pick an event, right? If it becomes a location that does weddings and graduation parties, will that change what the insurance looks like? Possibly. But for now, it's a passive use state park, and so it's insured accordingly.
So even if it's a state park, the state doesn't have a financial burden for insurance?
Not for the specific insurance for the property. I mean, New York State is, at the end of the day, I think there's some sovereignty issues. I don't want to play armchair lawyer, but there's some sovereignty stuff when it comes to whether or not claims can be filed against New York State for certain things. But in terms of, specific insurance for the property as it currently sits, Three Falls pays that insurance policy. It's one of our few expenses other than attorney's fees in the last, since we were formed. Yeah, Brett.
So a couple of follow-up questions, statements, first of all. What you guys are doing is absolutely fantastic. Thank you. It's a lot better than a resort being down there or something else. So thank you. And I know it's gonna be a long road to get a lot of bumps ironed out. I would just put out there that as I've been in and out probably on a daily basis for the past, 6 weeks and weekly since before that, the bridge is excellent. But you guys need some better signage down there now rather than later. I've witnessed, and actually I kind of look at myself as policing the area a little bit, but people parking in front of the sign that says dogs must be on a leash and getting out of their car and the dog runs down the road. And I admonished some woman there a few weeks ago, and she took affront to it, and I said, well, look at the sign you parked under. And she put the dog on a leash and walked her dog. I know a lot of people walk their animals down there, their animals off leash, on leash. I think it's great that you took the no fishing signs down, but you need to put more no swimming signs up. Because every day I go down, there's people in the water. They're doing something in the water. Somebody was on one of those newfangled, two-tiered devices you kind of float through the water on or jump up and down and skis, trying to do it off the old canoe dock. People diving off the diving board, people swimming in where the boats in boat launches in. So, and I understand it's a liability thing. That's why the signs have to be there. But if you can't see the signs, it's, something's gonna happen. And on top of that, then where are people supposed to park? Because both sides of the road basically have no parking signs. One on the flagpole side of the road has one right in the middle, but nobody seems to see that when they park
10 feet on either side. And maybe that's okay, but if you don't want people parking there, where are people supposed to park? The. Maybe a danger if people are in the water and it's kind of where the old dock was, right at the point. There's some pretty good pilings down there. And people are
From the old ferry.
from the old ferry. There used to be a buoy out there. I don't remember the buoy still there. But then, there could be, if the water gets a little lower, you get boats coming through there. That could be a real danger spot or people swimming in there, possibly injuring themselves on the pilings that are still there.
There's actually two different places.
Right,
where
right,
that exists.
right. And so maybe a better delineation between, I know she's not here, but the Justice property and the state park. Terry has commented multiple times. She said, chase people off her dock. She's cleaned up beer cans that have been down there, stuff like that. Now, I know that when our neighbor years ago had rentals in his place, I just put up a simple split rail section of fence. So there was a line, a demarcation line, and that seemed to solve a lot of problems. But when people are walking, and I know technically, there's a high water line, technically somebody could walk from Montezuma to Ithaca on the long water line, and it's perfectly legal to do. However, liabilities and stuff like that, on other people's property is a big issue.
That come down the road.
Yeah, yeah. So a couple of those things. Yeah, I think that kind of covers a lot of things that I had made notes on, basically just letting people know what they can or can't do and better signage in the short term. I know long term, if there's people working there, that's gonna be self-evident. If you do make a swimming place, obviously there's gonna be a lifeguard, but until there is such a thing, better signage, so at least if they are doing it, they know they saw the sign, and then it's the liabilities on them, not on you.
And on that, I think, Fred, I think I talked with Kevin just informally about having signage saying that they were leaving the park. So that.
Yeah,
so
that's a
that
good
it
idea.
carries
Yeah,
things that you're entering private property, and it's only fair to carry in the first couple of houses.
Tim.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but
Absolutely.
absolutely, have this quiet enjoyment,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. And Fred, speaking of Tim. Would the New York State Parks Department be willing to entertain if Tim were willing to sell back at, say, not a huge profit, but just what he paid for it, about 40 acres? If they were, I would just, everyone knows I'm not shy. I would just say, hey, why don't you walk to the sell? I mean, or am I wasting my time?
Well, the process whereby Parks acquires property
Right.
is that we would have an interested party and we would do an appraisal. And off of that, an appraisal, an offer is made. And there's really no negotiating. So if we have someone who is interested in selling their property to state parks, we'll meet with them. It's a 18 to 24-month window typically. And it is based on, depending on the value, there's one appraisal, two appraisals, and then an offer letter is generated. And there's no harm, no foul if you don't accept it. And if you do accept it, but there's no saying, well, the appraisal is this, I want the appraisal plus.
No, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I guess my here and now question to you is, when he gets back from Bermuda, should I say, hey, Tim, call Fred? That's.
We've got about a 5-year plan of properties across the 10 counties that we're going to be focused on acquiring.
So I shouldn't.
Yeah,
Okay,
I don't think that would fit into our top.
okay, well, I
Yeah.
say, I'm
Yeah,
not gonna do it if it is a 0%.
yeah.
Yes,
What county is the acreage in?
Oh, it's in Seneca County, town of Covert.
Not used to work there. Down or up, it's got buggy. That can't come from Seneca County, there's a lot of buggies, but that's a wicked little road down there. And I'm surprised that I'm surprised that they would not allow a lower speed limit in a park. I mean, gosh,
we've been surprised by a lot of things with respect to speed limits over the years.
We've been trying to get 89 dropped for decades with DOT. You get that dropped to 30. And just 30 going over the creek and through the park and with everybody crossing from the South Point over to the Gorge Trail. Can't get it.
Yeah, Robert, I'm assuming that South Frontenac will not be a seasonal road, is that correct? It will be maintained from this point forward?
Well, yes, from this point forward, until you gentlemen come to one of our meetings.
Well, you're the, no offense, but you guys are the board here.
It's a town of Colbert Road, though. I think it's
Okay.
Deb's point is the LDC. The LDC could want to put 3 lanes in there and there's nothing we could do about it. It's a town of
On
Colbert.
that subject of being year round, you respectfully, I think town of Colbert should, not just Jeff, but the guy who actually runs the plow. He is very concerned. I don't know him personally, I didn't hear it directly, but he's very concerned about life safety himself on the plow. So
Oh, you mean County Road?
just maintaining it, because I mean, it's not the steepest road in this area, but it's pretty near the steepest.
There's been trucks that have gone off it already.
And I'm not sure if, having it a year-round road, this is just the risk manager and me talking now, wouldn't fall under gross negligence. Because we all know what it looks like, we all know how steep it is, we all know that there could be black ice. Frankly, I don't have any dog in the hunt because we're not here when it freezes. But I mean, there are people like Brad's family and Terry Justice and the people who maintain it who could die on that road in the winter. So I just, there's negligence and gross negligence. I would say keeping it up, this my opinion, as a risk manager,
Well-
very large.
Well, we wouldn't want that to happen, so I strongly encourage you to attend a town of Colbert board meeting and share that good information.
Representative,
Yeah.
and she's very capable person,
No, but
and you want to ask,
better,
Hmm?
the more voices.
I think it's just so obvious, and that is the definition of gross negligence, where there's there's a hazard.
Yeah.
That's why Fred's cutting those trees, because he doesn't want to be accused of gross negligence, a tree that's about to topple.
Okay.
We've got a couple other questions. Yeah, Mark.
Could you tell me what the status is of applying for historic preservation on the property?
Everything with respect to all of that planning is on hold until the planning is done by the firm that we've engaged. So as you know, we received a $100,000 grant to do a master plan for the property. So we are going to wait on the results of that before we move forward with any. We don't want to preempt the master plan with our own plans.
But they're also, they're already in place.
Sorry.
But by not saying that things are historically relevant that you're gonna keep until after you get the master plan that may put something on that spot, you're getting your way before you go back and.
Okay, so
You know what I mean?
remember, hold on. Remember, no, it does. Let's just follow this logic. This is New York State Parks property. Anything that gets done has to go through the secret process. Okay? It's the office of the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. So that historic preservation is really cooked into the secret process. So anything that gets done. Seeker, State Environmental Quality Review. And part of that is, in addition to the natural resource impacts, it also takes into account the historical impacts.
So I'm also a historic preservation planner, and have taught the Cornell's preservation program. New York State passed a law that went into effect in 1980. And anytime public money is used, it has to be, so any state grants, any pass through that's coming through public funds in New York State has to be evaluated under historic preservation regulation. And that includes properties that are listed in the state register of historic places and those that are deemed eligible.
Oh.
So you don't even have to be listed in the state register with public funds to actually trigger historic preservation review. So this board has no power to be like, I don't like that building, I want to tear it down before we have a master plan. It's just, it's impossible to do.
And the trigger is 50 years and everything there is, everything on the property is over 50 years. I mean, we're all over 50 years. We're all historic property. So,
I'm not, but.
oh, sorry.
It is this planning group, they must be aware of that and they're taking those things into their consideration.
Ben Carver and I met with them directly, along with, Catherine from Covert, and I specifically emphasized, and that was actually, to me, one of the reasons I supported this particular firm being selected, they actually referenced it in their proposal, like understanding, to your point, understanding the historic resources is incredibly important. And so I can tell you that, as long as I'm on board, I will thoroughly make sure that we are abiding by those regulations, and Fred's gonna do it, right? And whoever comes out for Fred's call, so it's a safer process than it might perceive to be.
Just going to one of the prior speakers, there are actually recorded instances of trucks carrying large loads of rock going off into the ditches on South Frontenac. So there's a history of that, including medevacs off of Brayfield. So you probably want to be careful about that.
Another future Town of Covert board attendee.
What about naming?
This has been a process and we have not yet determined what the name will be.
That is our question too, though, just so
Yeah,
you
it
know,
is a
that is
good
every time we see
question.
Fred, that's the first
And
question.
I'm engaged on it and I don't have an answer for you this evening.
But just to back up, it's not established that it's Frontenac. I've seen that name printed somewhere in notes.
There has been no name
But it hasn't
associated.
been officially named.
It has
No.
not, the governor has not assigned it, given it a name.
And it will very likely be the governor and or the commissioner. There will be no local decision making on the name. Yeah, Dolores.
I would suggest that this room send a name that they think could be prosecuted.
Please don't, please don't.
So
Dolores,
we had,
please don't do that to me.
we actually did, we did send in a number of names and a number of suggestions, many of them from members of the community.
Yeah.
My understanding is that many of them were not considered. So we'll see what happens.
You know, but I've been true for a long time. I never knew about South Frontenac Road until the bridge went out. And so I would go down that to get down there. I said, people can you tell people, don't use it, go to bridges that take the bridge way, you know? It is really dangerous. But I think people have been using it because you can't use the other one, you know?
No, it's a good suggestion. I'm just trying to think of a way to tell people not to use something without publicizing it even further. But that may be something that Town of Covert will have to look at.
Maybe you could do it before.
Nailed it, Brad, right there.
Because it's become a popular way to go.
Sure.
Of the bridge, you know?
Yeah.
But you don't have to do
I
that.
think once the park gets going, there's a sign is up, like where the old scout camp sign was.
Since we have a name,
That'll be very evident. Once you get a name, you can put it on the sign, and it'll alleviate a lot of those issues.
no?
Other questions? Curiosities? Comments?
Yeah, just a couple, a follow-up, you said, don't write somebody about the name?
I mean, you're by all means do that. Just know that I personally have been working on this for a year and a half.
Yeah, but so I was just, like, I'm curious, like, it's Albany is making the decision and it's their decision and they're not soliciting input.
It's
anymore?
very
They
likely
have.
actually Governor Hochul's decision. So if you have her cell phone number and you have a name you really like,
Right.
you could probably run it by her. But that it is either gonna come out of the commissioner's office or the governor's
Yeah.
office.
It's just reading my scratch notes here. Is there any police presence going on right now?
Yep.
How often? I mean,
Well, we have,
What's
we
the-
have park police that
Sure.
mostly for first call response is going to Seneca County Sheriffs.
well, I guess more, and I assume that, I'm sorry, the just driving through, just to keep an eye on things type thing.
Yeah.
You know, not just a first responder, that's not what I meant.
But that's what's happening. So Seneca County is patrolling, Deb's been working on that with Seneca County Sheriff's Department.
Okay.
Park police are doing swing throughs. Yeah,
Yeah, we have the three primary agencies will be the Seneca County Sheriff's Department, Park Police, and the New York State Police.
right.
And then we have the municipal non-law enforcement crews that are down there multiple times a day. So DPW is down, Village DPW is down there twice a day.
At the water, so.
Right. Parks staff is down there at least once a day. Town of Ulysses Highway is down there
So
a couple times a day. Town of Covert Highway is down there a couple times a day. So we have a lot of eyes.
Okay.
In terms of specific law enforcement, it would be those three agencies, and then Trumansburg PD is mutual aid to those. So if something did happen.
As far as emergency, I get that. I mean, I just, maybe it behoove them to be there more visibly in the evening hours. I mean, if your workers are all down there during the day, they're done 3, 4, 5 o'clock at the latest. A hot day, they're bugging out early, and I get it. You know, but it seems to be that the late afternoon, early evening is when most of the transgressions that shouldn't be happening are happening. And a visible presence once a day, you know, sporadic time or something like that, one group, you know, that might be very beneficial.
It brings to mind about, we know emergencies, you call 911 and it's all routed correctly, that's the right way to go. Brad is right, hopefully people are doing swings, throughs. For people who've been going through for 60 or 70 years, what is the number or person of a non-police type observation? Because, you know, we sort of know if, you know, if a leaf is out of place, if you
Yeah.
walk somewhere long enough, you know what I'm saying? So who would, when the police wouldn't be called, but who do you want? Whose phone do you want to ring if we observe something? Is it one of Fred's folks or what? Non-police.
Not police, I mean,
You don't have to give an
you
answer
don't,
now.
so part of this process will be to grow the facility to have, you know, a responsible party living in the manager's residence, the caretaker's house, right? That will happen in time. Right now, I mean, if, take my card, if you notice something that's physically, you know, wrong with the property, I mean, a break-in, please call 911. You notice water leaking out of a faucet, give us a call and I can make sure we get it routed to the proper.
So call you or Bill or Kevin.
Yeah,
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, we wanted to know,
Yep.
because we're really eyes, even if we're not.
and it's a
officially
great
looking,
thing,
we're
it's
just-
a great thing to have you there and being us. And that's one of the things that's keeping this working is that it's the government, but it's also the neighbors who are incredibly supportive of this. And I've heard from folks about, you know, oh, something's out of place. Yeah, please give me a call.
Okay, I just wanted to
Or Kevin,
break protocol.
or Bill, yeah.
Right? Right. We've all seen the signs saying, you know, the buildings can't be used, hiking trails can't be used. When do you anticipate the safety review having been completed for those things?
No idea.
Why not?
We're actually intending to most likely not complete that until the master plan is done.
Yeah,
So they are shuttered indefinitely. And that's why Albany approved the passive use term for the open park. So I would not anticipate any of the buildings being open
So buildings, I understand may take longer. What about the hiking?
Oh, the hiking trails don't come close to being up to standard for state parks.
So it'll be some unknown amount of time.
Yeah,
Is the,
I've
is the,
got-
is the only accurate
Yeah.
answer, truly.
It's a big project. You know, the trail eroded on the north side of the creek. We can't use that. We're talking about having to do multiple bridges. We want to try and keep people out of the creek. We got to worry about rock falls and scaling. So there's a number of technical elements. I've got people looking at it, but I don't have a timeline for that.
What about trails throughout the rest of the property?
The South Rim Trail doesn't meet standard. That's not safe.
Say South, what about, there's a lot of other trails aside from the rim trails. Any word about those?
That's all part of the master plan process, which do we need to activate?
Yeah, we may not keep all the trails.
But if somebody wanted to go down right now and hike into the woods, they could do that.
Well, you can't,
Until you see them and then you call someone.
Oh,
and then-
Yeah,
But it's passive, you're not doing, there's nothing that says you can't do it.
There are signs up that you,
there's signs up.
There?
Yeah, there are signs saying that you're not to hike past this sign to go to the waterfall, not to be hiking up the South Rim Trail.
Yes, sir.
Is there anything being done to go along with the trails? Camp had like 12 campsites with little trails going and tent platforms in there. Is there anything being done with those platforms? Is they all going to be taken down, or are they eventually gonna be? Campsites? or
The,
is
the
that-
only thing that we're actively doing, because it's a health hazard, is we're filling in the outhouses.
So TBD on the campsites.
Yeah,
So all the platforms in there just sit there for.
Right.
The foreseeable.
Right.
All the tents are, though, all the coverage are, though.
Correct.
Other thoughts, comments, questions? Yeah.
My name is Doug Fink, I'm a Lansing resident, but a long time scouting support. So I just wanted to express my appreciation for all the work that you've done. It's a ton of work trying to bring so many different groups together to produce something. And it's very impressive.
Thank you.
Appreciate all the patience and everything. Whenever a safety review can be completed, I know that the scouts would certainly appreciate the use of the facilities. So I'm just throw that out there. Of course, you understand. And then it seems really obvious given the conversation that's passed, but I just want to clarify, is this park going to be listed as a state park like Tagana?
yes, it's a state park.
At some point, there will be, you'll pay to get in, I'm assuming.
Well,
so
Well, I hope so. I mean, it should be.
so part of, we've had a lot of conversations about this. Part of the reason why we keep coming back to the master plan is, for instance, given the limited parking, right? Is it really a financially viable revenue model to charge for one-off vehicle visitors the way Taganic does? Or is it going, and I'm not suggesting this is my preference or otherwise, but one of the potential ideas was that it's much more of an event venue. We don't know what's going to be the best way to proceed. It makes sense to charge for admission on July 4th when they can't get into Taganic. But
There's a better show down our road.
what if someone wants to pay that dollar, that number, whatever that magic number is, to hold their wedding on the 4th of July? You know, that's what we have to kind of think through from a business and revenue model standpoint. And that's really what the planning firm is going to help us get through.
A couple of years ago, we've been kind of busy since then, but we heard that there were 2 scout camps that had to be liquidated, one on Santa Fe and here. Is that the same situation? Does anybody know on Santa Fe, Obi or?
Babcock Hub.
I can give you some background on that, offline if you want.
I'm sorry, I'm William Murphy, I'm on the council board, scouter in Ellis Hollow. So I can give you some background now, thank you.
The Three Falls LDC is not involved in that conversation. That much I can say. Yeah, Liam.
Is there some way that we can partner with? There's a current friends group for together, right?
There is not.
There is not. Gee whiz. Maybe there ought to be one for them and one for the LDC. How do we start that?
I'm sorry, but could we speak up? I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. We don't have a friends group for Gigantic State Park apparently. And I was asking, how do we go about getting a friends group both for the Gigantic State Park and for the LDC this property?
So I can point you to some resources. Parks and Trails New York offers stand-up grants to help establish friends groups. Here, only friends group we have in this area would be for Robert H. Truman State Park. They've got a long-standing, got a small friends group associated with a dog park at Allen Truman. We've got a good friends group in about its 5th year of operating over at Fillmore Glen State Park. Okay, but not all state park facilities have friends group. Friends groups can run in scope and purpose. They can be just all volunteer based. Friends of Robert H. Truman, they collect cans. You know, they do nice plantings. They've applied for some really good grants. The Friends of Ganondagan have professional staff, are writing grants, are running programs, holding festivals. So there's a huge gamut. The Friends group for Sonnenberg Gardens and Mansion, that's operated by a Friends group, soup to nuts. It's State Parks property, but they run with all of their staff, all the programming and do all the maintenance on that facility.
The reason I raise it is because, you know, scouts are very interested in providing this kind of help. On the one hand, on the other hand, we don't want to necessarily take away from union labor. And I know that the way to do that is through a friends group. So I think
Could be a tool
for having that started.
It's not something that my office is good at starting up. Okay, we really know because I tried to do that. It's not a good top-down model. It's best when it's started with a group of active, engaged locals. The Friends of Fillmore are phenomenal. It was a group of folks from the village. Good, and they are hitting it on all marks and doing great work, getting PTNY grants, engaged with the park manager really well. Yeah.
Want to be respectful of everyone's time, but I also don't want to leave anyone out if anyone has any burning questions that have yet to be asked. All right, well, if not, Deb just wanted me to make mention of the fact that we hold regular meetings with members from the LDC, meeting with Fred and his team at Parks. So this is very much a collaborative management. At the end of the day, as we've said several times, this is a new New York State park property. With that comes all of New York State's guidelines, rules, and regulations, which cannot be bent, broken, or amended, at least not from our perch. I'll leave comments about other office holders in Albany aside, but we're bound by park approval for anything that we would ever want to do on site. Parks is bound by their standards with respect to facilities, maintenance, condition, et cetera. And so really part of the reason for tonight's meeting was, of course, to answer questions, but also to really clarify some of the language in the press release, what is passive use, but then to also really emphasize, I don't know if anyone from the press is here, but if they were, I would ask them to really emphasize the fact that this is going to be a multi-year project to bring the facilities and infrastructure in particular up to a bare bones basic standard, to include things like having potable water on site, right? So there is, with all the love and respect in the world for the Baden-Powell Council and their stewardship of the site, there is what what realtors would refer to as deferred maintenance on the house. And so we have to catch up with that. Now, the real kind of crux of that is who's going to pay for it. And again, we know a lot about water here in the village of Trumansburg, and it's roughly about $1 million per mile of pipe. My understanding is that there's a lot of pipe underground, although not very deep underground, which is part of the problem. So if we're talking about a complete overhaul and renovation of a water supply system, we're probably in the $3 to $3.5 million range before we put a backhoe in the ground. Where's that money going to come from? It's not going to come from these three municipalities. So hence the planning. The planning, as Fred mentioned earlier, opens up a lot of doors with respect to grant applications. And it is a New York State park. So I'm kind of hoping somewhere in here, we end up leaning on Parks budget. I don't know, Parks can't apply for certain grants, which is bonkers to me, but between grant applications and direct state funding, this will work, but it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort. So stay tuned, and thank you all for coming tonight.
Have a good 4th of July, everybody. Enjoy, be safe.
Winter Tuesdays? Second Monday? Town of Covert board meetings are the second Monday of every month at the Covert Town Hall, 7